Joining me now is Congressman Adam Schiff of California, the top Democrat on the House Intelligence Committee. Congressman, thanks for being with us. What went wrong here?
Well, what went wrong is the Intelligence Committee was not aware that there were hostages at this particular location when the green light was given to mount this counterterrorism operation, and unfortunately only learned thereafter of the loss of these 2 innocent lives. So it's a terrible tragedy, and it comes down to the risks that are inherent in this kind of warfare, where you're operating in a very impermissive environment. It's somewhere where it's very dangerous to have people on the ground, and our intelligence agencies make every effort to make sure there are no civilian casualties. But it's, as we can see with the tragic results, this operation, never a certainty, an absolute certainty.
Do we know, how do we know that they died? What is the proof of death here?
Well, I can't get into a lot of the specifics, but we will get varying degrees of intelligence reporting. Sometimes it'll be from our sister agencies, sometimes it'll be our own intelligence, sometimes it'll be signals intelligence. We have to often pierce the veil of propaganda put out by the other side. The other side will always claim counterterrorism operations were misdirected, whether it was at a wedding or a civil gathering. So we have to combine all of these elements. Sometimes we're able to get DNA, sometimes not, but we use every effort to see whether we can reach a high level of confidence about just who was killed. And I think in this case we do have that level of confidence.
How long have we known in the U.S. government, and when were you and the Intelligence Committees briefed?
Well, I was briefed, and my colleagues, I think, in the leadership, the Intelligence Committees were briefed within the last several days, over the weekend largely. In terms of the intelligence community itself, I think it has been amassing information since these counterterrorism operations, just who was killed, how many people were killed, were there any surprises, what about this particular lead, how credible is that information. Obviously, before you take the step of making it public or going to a family, you want to make sure that you have the facts exactly right.
Was there any claim from Al-Qaeda or other terror groups that this had happened in social media, or any other claim? You know, were we pushed to acknowledge it because they were about to announce it?
I don't think that was the case. I don't think this was a situation where we had to react to Al-Qaeda propaganda. There may or may not have been Al-Qaeda claims of the loss of some of their own people. I'm not sure about that, but I don't think this was a situation where we were responding. At least that's not the information I have at this point.
And after the loss of some of our hostages to ISIS, after Kayla Mueller's death, there's been a lot of talk about whether the U.S. policy of not negotiating is the wrong policy. Now, the Weinstein family is raising this issue. Should we revisit this?
I think it's the right policy. It's obviously a very difficult policy, and if it were one of my family members, I would be arguing strenuously that it was the wrong policy. But as a nation, if we get in the business of paying ransoms, we're in effect funding the people who are doing the kidnappings. We're encouraging more kidnappings, and I just don't think that's viable. All the same, I understand the very human dynamic involved, and just how agonizing and terrible it is for the families of those who are taken hostage, and of course a result like we've heard the president talk about today is the worst of all.
And should we reconsider the threshold for these signature strikes? Should there be an even higher threshold before the CIA and the authorization of the president, the general authorization that the president gives for these kinds of drone strikes?
Well, we will be reviewing very carefully the evidence that the intelligence community had here, and making sure that we determine whether the community met the standard, the very high standard the president has set out. That is, that in counterterrorism operations, there not be civilian casualties to a near certainty. Now, obviously, there can never be absolute certainty, but we'll want to know just what information did we have. Now, this compound was under very lengthy surveillance, so we did have a lot of evidence, and we'll be wanting to pour through that to make sure there weren't things that we missed, but also to make sure that we had lots of hours of surveillance. Did this meet the standard that the president has set?
And you don't think that we were misled by any human intelligence, by any of our sources in Pakistan?
Well, you know, I want to wait until we do a full review, but I don't have any information that that's the situation. But again, we're going to want to look at everything, all the intelligence that fed into the mounting of this counterterrorism operation to determine just what went wrong.
Thank you. Thanks very much, Congressman Adam Schiff.